It's such like a simple act too.
Right.
I mean, obviously you're giving up your time and you're coming out to drive and all of those things, but like it's such a simple act. And I think that, folks outside of the trucking industry, they might lose sight of the fact that like truckers have a unique opportunity because every kid loves big trucks.
Right? Yeah.
Like I don't know a single kid who grew up that didn't think they were at least cool and wanted them to blow their air horn a couple of times when they pass. So like it's such a simple act to be able to take, a Saturday or a Sunday out of your day and give up a couple hours. And this totally made this kid's day.
And we're back with another edition of Roses and Razzberries. The usual crew back again. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, Tyson Fisher. Just again, as always, we like to remind you, any ideas or we're welcome to those additions. So if you have a rose or a raspberry, go ahead and send those to roses@landlinemag.com. Now that we got that out of the way, how are we doing today, fellas?
Fantastic.
I have no complaints at all.
Man, you guys are just, right on top of it. And by the looks of things, I think we were all in pretty good moods because we got a lot of roses to get to. So, Tyson, why don't you get us started here?
Yeah, sure. I want to give some roses to a guy named Paul Lewis. So Paul Lewis, he's a truck driver from Ontario, Canada, and he found out about a 12-year-old boy who was basically waiting for a ride in a big rig. So the boy who has a Down syndrome, he was promised by his dad that he could ride in the truck when he turned 12. Well, unfortunately, the boy's father died from cancer before that could happen. So that's the sad story. But upon discovering this news, Lewis, he organized what he called a teddy bear run for the kid. So basically what Lewis did was he got more truck drivers to participate in it was like a 5-mile convoy is what it was. So yeah, pretty cool. So, this is another, example of the trucking industry coming together pretty much, in a big way for an altruistic purpose, which, I always thought altruism is dead, but the trucking industry always kind of revives my faith in that maybe it does exist somewhere.
You're right.
In this world,
I too am also hard and crusted over inside, Tyson, and like trucking has kind of like renewed my faith in some of that. I see what they do with like the Make-A-Wish convoys and the Special Olympic convoys, and now this one as well. Like you're right, it's always going above and beyond, especially for folks with special needs, and there seems to be such a great connection there with those truckers.
Absolutely. Too. So yeah, roses to Lewis, and then all the other truckers who did end up volunteering, their time to make a memorable moment for a kid.
Yeah, obviously don't say this in a bad way, but you guys talked about how often it happens, and the trick for us sometimes is actually getting to speak with that person or finding out about it, because more times than not, they don't want the recognition. They're not in it for, the accolades and the pats on the back. They just want to, make this kid's day or these kids' days or however the case may be. So to go, kind of go to that length, we obviously...
And it's such like a simple act, too. Right. I mean, obviously you're giving up your time and you're coming out to drive and all of those things, but like it's such a simple act. And I think that, folks outside of the trucking industry, they might lose sight of the fact that like truckers have a unique opportunity because every kid loves big trucks.
Right? Yeah.
Like I don't know a single kid who grew up that didn't think they were at least cool and wanted them to blow their air horn a couple of times when they pass. So like it's such a simple act to be able to take, a Saturday or a Sunday out of your day and give up a couple hours. And this totally made this kid's day.
Yeah, well, this may not have, made their day, quote unquote, but it was definitely kind of given that perspective. Another group that got a ride in the truck along with truckers. Ryan, you got the story on this one.
Less of an altruistic intent with this ride along, but roses going out to the Wisconsin State Patrol for their recent Trooper in a Truck campaign. And look, I know that oftentimes law enforcement truck drivers are on opposite sides of the lines, but this one kind of caught my attention. Sergeant Daniel Dietrich of the Wisconsin State Patrol was recently on Landline Now talking with Mark Reddig, and he talked a little bit about the Trooper in a Truck program, but mentioned about the amount of violations that they catch. Obviously, they catch a lot during the regular workday. When they're in the trucks, he said that those violations are 5 to 10-fold. So obviously, it's a big benefit for them to be in the trucks and be able to see some of the distracted driving and unsafe behaviors that are going along around commercial vehicles. That was a tough
Easier
one
for
to
you
get
to
through.
say, yeah.
Exactly. But the thing that stood out to me, he said, quote, there are issues, and this is how we want to work with the industry to remedy some of the things that they're dealing with on a daily basis. So not only was it a benefit for the Wisconsin State Patrol to be in those vehicles and actually be able to catch some people doing some things, but it's also a way for them to see some of the safety concerns that drivers just have on a day in, day out basis, being able to understand what it's like to be in the cab of a truck and know what it's like to have motor vehicles traveling around you. He also said that collaboration with the Wisconsin Trucking Association has also afforded officers with the Wisconsin State Patrol the chance to use driving simulators. So they've actually been able to get behind the wheel of a virtual semi and have a better idea of what it's like to deal with those blind spots and other in-cab safety concerns. So I just thought it was kind of unique and cool that they're taking this opportunity not as a gotcha aha moment to catch a bunch of people doing stuff, but they're also doing it to educate themselves about what it's like to be a commercial truck driver, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's very important to get the perspective, that first-hand perspective, because without it, like you just, it's all speculation, and that doesn't do anyone any good, especially when it comes to law enforcement.
Sure. Well, and I think we've all dealt with it too. Like truck drivers, they love their own, right? They feel that you can't understand it unless you've done my job and you walk a mile in my shoes, or I guess drive a mile in my truck. Like that's what they believe. Well, this is what these troopers are doing. So they're going out there and trying to get first-hand experience, and hey, I tip my cap to them on that.
Yeah, we see enforcement blitz, and it does make you, oh man, what's what this time? But this is in this case.
And like last month, I was making fun of them. So
so it's go about it that way, and like you said, it's kind of one of those things, especially with this industry. Seeing it from firsthand is the best way to go. And this might not be next story here, something that you'd want to experience firsthand or get this perspective of. Tyson, why don't you tell us about the next one here?
So here's an extreme example of a front door delivery. Perhaps the more appropriate term would be in-store delivery. So here's some raspberries to a truck driver hauling 46,000 pounds of beef for plowing through a Wendy's in Pennsylvania. Yeah, so
they were the ones that had the "Where's the Beef" campaign, weren't they? Well, there it is.
You might have been, yeah. So, but that in itself doesn't warrant a raspberry because bad things happen.
Could be a mechanical deal. Who knows?
But this guy's excuse has to be a first time I've heard this one, which is when questioned by local law enforcement, the driver said his glasses had fogged up and that he couldn't see.
Hey, I mean that's a very real concern.
I'm not gonna lie.
We're here, yeah.
So I can't really call out BS because I don't wear glasses, but it sounds like BS. It's like how often
it does sound like BS.
Time to time I wear them. Of course, Ryan's probably this glass wearing expert among us crew, but I wear them not here time to time. But I mean, they can fog up, but I think that's a bit of a stretch, right?
No, you can take your glasses off and deal with it.
You can do that? Maybe a little
the option of going like this exists. I don't know if you guys do that.
Maybe kick up that defrost a little bit there in the cab or something.
He needs to turn his AC on or something, bro. He's getting a little sweaty.
I also want to give a shout out to WGAL. It's that local news outlet that's reporting on the crash for the very last sentence in the story that answered the most important question, which was the meat was destroyed. That was how they ended the story. The
good follow-up by the journalist. That's good.
Destroyed. But at any rate, this gives a whole new meaning to the word drive-through, right?
Yeah,
Come on.
There
you go.
That's good.
Yeah, there probably wasn't a tip involved in this delivery either. We're going to go ahead and assume that.
Put a womp sound effect in post.
So we talked about that in enforcement blitz typically being, a little worrisome. We also have some, federal testing issues that in most cases is not something is, on the good side of things, at least from the trucking perspective. But maybe you have a little bit of a flip up here again on us, Ryan.
Look, this one could have gone either way for me, I think. But I'm going to go with Roses on this one. Roses to the U.S. Department of Transportation for withdrawing a final rule regarding oral fluid testing for transportation workforce drug and alcohol testing programs. That was a mouthful, and it sounds boring, but I swear to you, I found something kind of funny in this. So basically, for a little background, in May of 2023, the U.S. DOT announced amendments that were basically allow for the inclusion of oral fluid testing for drug programs. The department said final rule is not intended to replace anything, just basically give carriers another option and employers another option for when it came to issuing those agency-issued drug tests. Now, there was still a myriad of issues they had to deal with, what technologies they were going to use, how they were going to train collectors. There was actually what they called I'm trying to recall the exact word. Either way, it was something that basically couldn't happen. They had written it in there, and they're like, wait, we just made something that couldn't happen. We made a logical fallacy here. And also certifying the laboratories to test something that, by the way, over a year later has still not even begun. So there's a lot of things that they have to clear in order to do this. But one of those things was kind of clearing up some of those testing parameters. And in an effort to address some of those concerns, the DOT issued a direct final rule this past June. because it was a direct final rule, there was no public comment period. Now, here's the funny part, because I thought this was funny. I don't know, maybe I'm just out here getting joy out of other people's pain. But according to the DOT, that June final rule was published as a direct rule because without public comment period, because the agency felt, quote, it was a non-controversial action and anticipate no adverse comment on any of the provisions of the rule. Well, the DOT, being nice, gave stakeholders 24 hours to respond with concern and said they would pull that final rule if they did. Remember, they said it was non-controversial. They didn't anticipate any. Right. Within 24 hours, they had 19 comments. So on August 1st, they withdrew that rule. Now, look, I get it. It's probably going to be something that slogs along at a pregnant pace, just like everything in legislative affairs for our country. But good on them for at least sticking to their word and being like, hey, right? We gave you 24 hours. We did actually get some comments. Sorry, our bad.
Right.
I think just the concept of, federal and non-controversial, maybe just kind of that's where, it didn't quite go together there.
No, I've always said, and I've said it on the show before, which is, but the comment period is super important for anything, because any agency can't possibly account for all the possibilities that are out there. There's just so many variables, and so it gives people time to lend their expertise on the topic. Say, hey, you kind of missed this thing, So,
well, and we've seen legislative action that had a 30 or 60-day comment period, and then at the end of those 60 days, it's like 2 people said something.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was just kind of impressive to me to also see 19 different comments pouring over a 24-hour period about something that, quite honestly, is pretty damn boring.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, and kind of talking about, not being a one-size-fits-all business type, say that often. It's just what affects one person doesn't affect the other. So, yeah, it's like Tyson said, it's important to, voice your concerns and, speak up when you see something that's going to affect your business especially. But, Tyson, you have, a bit of a, maybe back a little bit of a follow-up to a previous story. Not necessarily a follow-up, but just a better spin on things here.
Yeah, so if I recall correctly, so the last Roses and Razzberries segment, I may have bummed everyone out with some dying puppies and kittens.
Really set my week off. That was good.
So let me make up for that by giving out a round of roses to all the truckers on Facebook that helped reunite a fellow driver with his canine companion. So what happened was an animal shelter in Oklahoma made a Facebook post looking for a trucker who had lost his dog at a local Walmart. Fortunately, there was a description of the driver in his truck. So what happened was the trucking community basically assembled and they found this guy. So, the truck drivers basically reposted that on Facebook community pages. And less than a week later, the animal shelter posted an update with photos of the trucker reunited with his dog, which was pretty cool.
These stories never get old to me.
According to the animal shelter, this happened because truck drivers, share the face on community pages and through their CBs and whatnot. So, social media can be an awful place sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I have seen some trucker-specific Facebook pages that are just absolute dumpster fires.
I'm not going to. Two in mind right now.
Okay.
I'm not going to say
we won't name them specifically, but we'll say it's out there.
We all know they exist. But stories like this, it really shows us how much of a positive effect that social media can have on the world. Absolutely. So this driver was in Houston when he was contacted. And again, he lost his dog in Oklahoma. So not sure that happens in a pre-social media world. So awesome for everyone for doing that.
Yeah, I constantly have seen these stories, and they always amaze me how far apart these folks are. I mean, some of them we've seen be completely across country, Oklahoma to Texas. Not that huge of a jaunt, but still, I guess, Texas is a pretty damn big state, so it might be big. But still, I've seen some of these ones where it's spanning across the entire U.S., and folks are just reunited with their pets. And to me, I grew up in the 80s. That was the time you lost your dog. Hey, man, you made some flyers and looked around for a while, but other than that, he was gone.
All right, well, if you have any more pet stories or anything of that nature, again, Rose or Raspberry can be sent to roses@landlinemag.com. That's it for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. For Tyson Fisher and Ryan Witkowski, I'm SJ Munoz. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.